Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio, so today I've got some more tournament games for you. But it's a very special weekend, ladies and gentlemen. This was the weekend when the new Pokémon trading card game set BREAKPoint was legal for the very first time. So I got myself down to Mad for Miniatures in St Austell in the most beautiful part of the UK, that being Cornwall, and I recorded a whole bunch of games from a city championship. The format here is X and Y to BREAKPoint. It is standard format, but BREAKPoint is now legal. We are playing best of 3. We are playing 50 minutes, and I've made sure to get some decks in here that are using cards from the new set so we can see how good they are and we can start making an assessment of how much of an impact they're going to make. Huge thank you to Vinnie Gardner and all at Mad for Miniatures for allowing me to record and making it very simple. So sit back, grab yourselves a nice beverage, and enjoy this game from the first weekend when BREAKPoint was legal. 50 minutes, best of 3, X and Y to BREAKPoint. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we are rolling with round 2 from St Austell from Mad for Miniatures. And we're in Cornwall, the loveliest part of the UK. I am slightly biased, of course. And on the left, we have Chris DeBelt, and he is going to be playing Manectric Bats. And on the right, we have Matt Beard, and he is going to be playing Debelski, I should say. He is going to be playing Entei Camerupt, which is a nice little interesting little deck. And the good news is I have both a Camerupt and an Entei in front of me, so we are going to be good rulings-wise. So Chris goes first. He's got a couple of Zubats down, and we see a Trainer's Mail right away. Now it looks, is that a Battle Compressor? And I believe a Head Ringer. Could put the Head Ringer onto Camerupt, increasing the attack cost of Camerupt by 1. Oh, no, there's a level ball in there, and in situations like this, ladies and gentlemen, level ball is good. He's going to want to try, Chris is, to get as many bats out as he can. Those Entei's 130 HP can be pesky. Now, I don't actually know what Matt is playing, but he might be playing that new tool Fighting Fury Belt, the tool which can only be attached to basic Pokemon, which gives them an extra 40 HP, which would give 170 HP Entei. And let's not forget the first attack of Entei reduces damage done the following turn by 30. So Entei here could be looking at a lot of HP. So it's a very good idea for Chris to get those bats down and start just chipping away, as we see a Muscle Band. The other downside for Chris, of course, is that Entei can hit 100 and we see a Shaman come down to draw an extra 3 cards, using the setup ability to draw until he's got 6 in his hand. Now, the other thing that Chris has got to be careful of is that Manectric has 170 HP, and Entei's second attack does 130 for 4 energy, 2 fire and a double colourless. But if you, and we see a Super Scoop up here, and it's a Tails, which means if Entei gets 2 Muscle Band on, and remember, Entei has that Fated Double ancient trait, allowing you to attach 2 tools at once. If Entei gets 2 Muscle Bands on, then that means he can actually hit 170 and one-hit KO a Manectric. So it's really going to depend on what build Matt is playing here. If Matt is playing that new Fighting Fury Belt, you put 2 of them on Entei, all of a sudden you've got 210 HP, which is a lot. If he puts 2 Muscle Band, which to be honest, in this matchup, Muscle Band would be a little bit more useful, 2 Muscle Band on that Entei, and all of a sudden he's hitting for 170 damage. And that's what gives Entei a real advantage over decks like Manectric and Evil Tau based decks, the ease with which they can hit 170 damage. So we see 4 Zubats coming down on turn 1, and that's pretty handy. Now, we also see that Camerupt. We'll see more about the Camerupt as we go. Oh, and what do we see? Is that an Assault Vest and a Muscle Band? As we see a Professor's Letter coming down. Not a huge fan of the Assault Vest, purely because what it does, it reduces damage done to Entei by 40 if you've got if your opponent is using Special Energy. But Manectric, I mean, some decks a lot of them play a couple of Flash Energy to get around the fighting weakness. Flash Energy being a special energy that takes away your electric energy's weakness. electric Pokemon's weakness, but it's really not all that and a bag of potato chips. Now, especially in a deck like this, because Chris is very unlikely to put it down. So we see a Sycamore there, gets rid of free energy. He's obviously setting up for a Blacksmith play, the supporter that allows you to attach 2 basic fire energy from your discard to one of your fire Pokemon. And he's going to want to get them out as soon as possible. Of course, the fact that he's played a Sycamore already means that there will be no turn 1 Blacksmith. And Entei, his first attack is Flame Screen. It takes 2 energy. So, unfortunately, not going to be using it this turn. If he had got a turn 1 Flame Screen, then he'd actually be able to do 50 damage with that 1 Muscle Band and get the KO on the Zubat. Now, I'm not a fan of Matt's choices here. He's got a Muscle Band and an Assault Vest on each Entei. What that means is there is going to be, and we see a Golbat there doing 20 to the Entei. What that means is he's not going to have 2 Muscle Band on an Entei, and that's what he really needs in this matchup. He wants to get 2 Muscle Band onto the Entei so that he can one-hit KO the Manectric. Now, to be fair, might be that he doesn't have a lot of experience playing against Manectric or things of that nature, but we are going to see a KO here straight away from Chris. Entei's now got 130 HP. Minus the 20 damage is 110. And Manectric's second attack, which I believe is Assault Laser, does 60 damage or 120 if your opponent's Pokemon has a tool attached. Not 180 if it's got 2. That would be very, very mean for Entei. So he's going to be doing 120 with that Manectric. The Golbat's got free retreat, so he'll be able to retreat it. And Chris is going to get the KO on that Entei. Now, we see another Golbat, and Chris there, so he's biting the benched Entei, and he knows that this is what he needs to do. He knows that he has got the KO on the active Entei, so why go for the overkill? Now, it would have been a fair bit to ask for, admittedly, but had Matt got 2 Muscle Bands on the benched Entei, then this next turn he would be able to go DCE, Blacksmith to get 2 fire energy, Heat Tackle for 170. And that would have been very, very useful indeed. Alrighty then, so Chris, he's got the Muscle Band. He doesn't need, and he's thinking there, because he doesn't need the Muscle Band on the Manectric. And now here's one advantage Manectric does have. Manectric with 2 energy and a Muscle Band, assuming, of course, that the Entei has a tool on, will do 140 and get a one-hit KO. Now, Assault Vest isn't going to do anything because Manectric's going to have basic energy on. Hard Charm would help, but we haven't seen a Hard Charm from Matt yet. So Chris here, he's playing a VS Seeker, grabbing a Sycamore out of the discard, ready to play next turn. And up comes the Manectric, and we see an Assault Laser for 140, which will get the KO on the Entei. Now, Matt here, if he sets up Entei with 2 Muscle Band, he takes that play away. Because, yeah, Chris can come up and do 140 and one-hit KO the Manectric. Fine, not a problem. The Entei, sorry. But then if the Entei comes up and does 170, which would be 4 energy, 2 Muscle Band, then at that stage, he's just going to be able to go ahead and get the one-hit KO anyway. So it really doesn't matter. So, yeah, that's the way this matchup often goes. Manectric can get the one-hit KO on Entei, but he's never going to want to do it, because if he gets a one-hit KO on Entei, Entei gets a one-hit KO back, and I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, if you're trading 1 prize for 2, that's a good thing. Not to mention the fact that Manectric cannot usually attach 2 energies per turn, not unless you're playing something like Maxilist Elixir or the Mega or something like that, whereas Entei can go DCE Blacksmith to attach all 4 energy in 1 turn. Now, we see a DCE coming down on the Seismitoad there. On the one hand, that's going to allow Matt to do 30 damage. On the other hand, that Manectric's doing a minimum of 80 with Assault Laser. So, I don't know. Now, we see here, Matt's got a muscle band on the Entei. He's then put another one on the Camerupt. He could have 2 muscle bands on the Entei. He's got the DCE. Although he didn't have a blacksmith, it looks like. Had he had a blacksmith that turn, he actually could have had everything he needed for the KO. But it looks like he didn't have that, so it's a moot point. Now, we do see a Dimension Valley coming down from Chris here. And this is an interesting card in Manectric decks. You're playing the bats anyway. What Dimension Valley does is it reduces the attack cost of all psychic Pokemon by 1 colorless energy. But all of the bats attack for 1 colorless energy. So it's a way of basically allowing your bats to attack for free. So you can be attacking with the bats while attaching to your Manectrics, for instance. So the Camerupt there has 180 HP. We did see a level ball from Chris earlier when he could have taken a head ringer. Of course, he did get the 4 Zubats out turn 1, which was pretty darn good. There was an argument that he takes the head ringer, puts it on the Camerupt, and now he's able to do... Because if he gets a head ringer and a Golbat here, he's actually got the KO. Golbat's ability allows him to drop... Oh, and he's got the Golbat. Does he have the head ringer? That's going to be the big question. Because here what he can do is use the AZ to pick up either the Golbat or the Crobat, and then he'll have a Golbat in hand to put down on the Zubat. Or he could use the AZ to pick up the Shaman and reuse. Now, if Chris sees the head ringer here, and a Golbat, he's already used Crobat's ability when you evolve place 3 damage counters to bring Camerupt from 180 to 150. He would then be able to use Golbat's ability to drop 2 damage counters and bring it down to 130. And then, if he puts a head ringer on the Camerupt, Assault Laser will then do 60, plus the 60 because he's got a tool on Camerupt, plus 20 for the muscle band, which will be 140 and actually get the KO. And after all of that long-winded explanation of how he could go about getting the KO, it's all a moot point. Oh, dearie me. Never mind. So, what I really want to see from Matt's deck here, I really want to see a, Oh, when the sound's come back on, I do apologise, that's the bar. Please don't think me inept, ladies and gentlemen. The sound was supposed to be off, so please don't hate me for that. Now, we do see a DCE coming down on the Camerupt. It's not going to do a huge amount, though. We'll talk about his attack in a moment. But I was hoping he's going to have Bursting Balloon on the Entei. That's the new tool that if you attack the Entei, you take 6 damage counters, but it gets discarded at the end of your turn. I know there were a couple of Enteis at the tournament who were playing that, but that wasn't the case, unfortunately, in this game. So, hey-ho. Now, we do see a Blacksmith coming down there, but it's actually not going to be all that much use at the moment. I mean... Has he got a Blacksmith? Yes, he is playing a Blacksmith. And this is where he needs 2 Muscle Band on the Entei. That would be huge right about now. Now, what he's actually doing is setting up the Camerupt. Now, Camerupt attacks for a DCE 2 Fire, which he's just put on the Camerupt. Discard as many Fire Energy attached to your Pokemon as you like. That's any of your Pokemon. The attack does 50 times the amount of damage discarded. Now, we see there is a Muscle Band on the Camerupt, so free Fire Energy discarded gets a KO on the Manectric. Now, he could be 3 prizes down by that stage, but that's what he's going to try and do. Next turn, ideally, he attaches 2 Fire Energy via Blacksmith and another Fire Energy on his field somewhere. And then he's got 5 Fire Energy in play. He discards 3 of them to KO the Manectric, but then he's still got 2 in play. And then the following turn, he can, essentially keep doing that. So he does need to discard 3 Fire Energy in order to get the KO. A Blacksmith here on the Entei would be amazing, but again, and I hope he spotted this. No, he's got the KO. That's not the... Oh, a Blacksmith there would have been huge. But you see here... Having a DCE and 3 Fire Energy on an EX to get the KO is more annoying than having 4 energy rather than 5 on a non-EX to get the KO. Although you could argue having 2 Muscle Band makes it just as difficult. Now here, Chris is in exactly the same position, except he doesn't need the Headringer. He's going to need a Golbat, he's going to need a Crobat, and he's going to need another energy. But if he gets them, that's 190 damage, and he's rolling. And this is really why Entei makes a better attacker for Matt in this particular matchup. Because Chris is in a position here where he can get the KO on the Camerupt or on the Entei while probably being KO'd back. Fine. But if you're taking 2 prizes, giving 2 prizes, that's not a bad trade. If you're taking 1 prize and then giving 2, that's a pretty poor trade, ladies and gentlemen. That is, in fact, quite literally how people lose games. So that's really what makes Entei the better attacker here. Now, we do see a super scoop up from Chris. If he hits it, it's a tails. Had he hit it, that would have allowed him to pick up the Crobat, guaranteeing that he had the Crobat to do the extra 30 to Camerupt. Now, there is an interesting question of what Chris does if he doesn't get the Crobat second energy, because what he doesn't want to do is leave the Manectric in the active without getting a KO. That would be very, very bad. Oh, he's got the Crobat anyway. So if he's got another energy here, remember that Crobat has free retreat. If Chris has got an energy, he's got the KO, and then he's down to 1 prize at that stage, and the game's looking pretty gosh darned good. So we do see a Muscle Band. Did I see a flash of yellow in Chris's hand there? Oh, we see a Super Rod. Presumably he's going to get some energy back here, which would be somewhat useful, meaning he can hit those energies for later on in the game. Would be somewhat useful, I think, would be a fair way to put it. Now, it may well be... Now, I know Matt's more of a local player. I don't know how much experience he's got playing the game. And a lot of the times, and this is a tip for any newer players out there. I know a lot of people that watch this aren't, but I know I have a whole bunch of people watching this are newer players. And one tip I'll always give to newer players is, it doesn't really matter if you lose game 1. Try not to lose it too slowly, because it is 50 minutes best of 3 at the end of the day. But get information. So in this game here, he's behind. He's not having a great time. But he's realising that he can hit 170 with Camerupt. What he needs to be thinking is, okay, now I can hit 180 or 170 with Entei, and then the prize trade goes in my favour. Because it takes an awful lot of effort for Crobats to kill Enteis. And when Manectric kills Entei, he gets 1 hit KO'd back. Now we're going to need... Oh, there is a Blacksmith. But there's no Lysander here, so he's going to get the KO on the Crobat. But this isn't a particularly bad thing. Chris is now going to get the KO, and he's going to need to take 1 prize, whereas Matt's got a minimum 2 KOs here. And I'll tell you in a minute, but prizes for guessing why that Dark Energy is in the Manectric list. I shall give you a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Try and figure out why Chris is playing Dark Energy. So, here the prize trade is going against Matt, but Matt's got some information in this game. Matt has learned a couple of things, hopefully. First of all, okay, I need to hit 170, and if I hit it with Entei, the prize trade is in my favour. Secondly, he's probably realised that the combination of Manectric plus Bats really does put him in a position to lose quite quickly. Because he can get, that Camerupt goes down quickly through a combination of the two. Whereas Entei, because the prize trade is in your favour, you don't mind. And he's hopefully also realised that Chris is in no way relying on special energy. Meaning that the whole Assault Vest is a waste of time. So the Assault Vest, and because, let's remember, ladies and gentlemen, that Manectric does more damage, 60 more damage, in fact, when you've got a tool attached. Assault Vest actually, in a very literal sense, does more harm than good in this matchup. Okay, have you figured it out yet? The reason is, Eviltal decks, dark decks, Eviltal is weak to lightning. So a lot of these dark decks play Gallade and Maxie's Hidden Ball trick. That's the supporter that allows you to put a fighting Pokemon on your bench from the discard and draw 5 cards, as long as you play it as the only card in your hand. So you'd play 1 Stage 2 Gallade, or maybe 2, and you try and get the Gallade out. And Therefore, Manectric hits Evil Tau for weakness, but Gallade hits Manectric for weakness, and he's a non-EX, so it swings the prize trade back in your favour. Well, those decks also often play Shadow Circle, the stadium that takes away your weakness if you have a dark energy attached. So it's kind of countering a counter. If these Evil Tau decks play Gallade to counter Manectric, then Chris can put a dark energy on his Manectric, take advantage of his opponent's Shadow Circle stadium, and actually get rid of the weakness on Manectric. And with a Muscle Band, Gallade only hits for 150 if you've played a supporter that turn. And 150 is not enough to KO Manectric. So the dark energy there is as a response. Now here, unfortunately, this is a little bit too little too late from Chris here. From Matt here, sorry. He can use Flame Screen for 50, which will reduce damage done by 30 the following turn, but he'll still have 140 HP, so, there we go. It's still, within Manectric's range. And he's got the requisite energy anyway. Had he had a DCE, he could have done 150, but it wouldn't have been enough anyway. Oh, he's got the DCE. Now, I'm hoping here, Chris is looking at it going, oh, and you got to flip. If you hit Tails, 30 damage is done. And it is. And we see a Lysander bringing up the Seismitoad and getting the KO for the win here. So, hopefully in that last turn at least, Matt looked at that and went, you know what, mate? If I'd have had 2 Muscle Bands on here. And look how that game, even at the end, even after Matt went behind by a few prizes, that last turn there, let's say that Chris had, I keep getting the names wrong, I do apologise. I know you're looking at the screen and you've got both the names up there. I'm afraid I had that in post-production. That's right, I'm all fancy. Right now, all I've got is a little piece of paper that I keep forgetting to refer to. So, had he had the KO on the Manectric there, Chris didn't have a backup Manectric, and even if he did, he'd have only had 1 energy on. It would have been difficult for him to KO that Entei. Although the Entei would have been on 50 damage, leaving him on 80, which would mean that a Crobat drop plus an attack with a muscle-banded Crobat would have got the KO. But you see that how the prize trade can really go in his favour if he gets those Enteis. So what I'd be looking at Matt to do here is to ignore, as I've said this a couple of times now, ignore the Assault Vests, and just go aggro Entei with double Muscle Band. Now, it's going to be interesting to see whether he plays Eco Arm here. That's it's the item card that allows you to shuffle a whole bunch of tools back into your deck, and so that they can be reused later. And it's really, really good. Free tools, if anyone was wondering how many. And it's really, really good in a deck like Entei because it gives you, potentially 7 Muscle Bands or 7 Bursting Balloons or things of that nature. Now, as we're between games, I would like to say a huge thank you, first of all, to both Matt and to Chris for agreeing to be on stream. I very much appreciate that. It's always nice. Everyone at this tournament, we see Mulligan from Chris there. Everyone at this tournament that I asked to be on stream went straight on stream without any arguments. Like I said in game 1, it's warmer inside, but you do have to stand up to play. Everyone was so nice at this tournament. It was wonderful. And a huge thank you to everyone at Mad for Miniatures in St Austell in Cornwall in the UK. And especially to Vinnie Gardner, the proprietor of said establishment, for allowing us to record. And like they do down in Athena Games in Norwich, he actually had a little room out the back. He set up a table for us, put some extra lights in there so we could see a bit more clearly, and, gave us an extension lead, and all of that really just made it super easy to record. And that's why we've actually got 7 rounds coming from this tournament, so much so that at the moment I'm pretty much uploading a game a day. And another mulligan from Chris. Now, Matt's going to be going first here, and he's got at least 2 extra cards to start with. And this is how you get things like, Ultra Ball 2 Energy, blacksmith them on, and attach a DCE. Which is very, very interesting. Very interesting. It should be noted as well, and we did see this in the previous game. I believe it got sycamored, but for those eagle-eyed viewers out there, Chris does actually play a Startling Megaphone here, so he can get rid of all of Matt's trainers, all of his tools, I should say. So if he's got 2 Enteis with 2 muscle bands, and another mulligan. So we can get rid of all of Matt's tools in one go. So Matt, unless he has to sycamore them, he really wants to focus on don't put down the muscle bands. Put them both down before you get a KO, but then leave the other 2 in your hand. Like attaching a special energy too early when you know your opponent is playing an enhanced hammer and can get rid of it. If you know your opponent's playing a startling megaphone, what you want to do is keep your items, keep your tools in hand until you absolutely need them. And as a tiny, tiny little thing, it should be noted that the rule with mulligans is you're supposed to count the mulligans and then take as many as you wish. You don't have to take them all, but you'll say, I'm taking 4, and you take them, or I'm taking 3, and you take them all. You're supposed to count them and then take them all in one go, not take them one at a time as your opponent is mulliganing. It really doesn't matter, but as a little thing, it is worth mentioning. So, Chris finally has a basic. Matt's got a big hand. He's got an Entei. He's got a Camerupt. And he's letting Chris go first. Now, and straight away we see the head ringer. Now, there is some logic to this. Now, the downside of letting a Bats deck go first is, as we saw in the previous game, if your opponent goes Zubat, 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 that is a whole bunch of... and that's not good. That is a whole bunch of damage ready to get going. However, had that AZ not come out, there is a possibility that Matt goes Muscle Band, DCE, discard 2 energy, blacksmith them back on, and he could get a turn 1 heat tackle for 170 and KO the Manectric straight away. Even as it is, if he gets a blacksmith off this turn, he can flame screen for 50 damage with 1 DCE. And there is the blacksmith. He can flame screen for 50 damage, which will KO the only Zubat on the field and get the KO on, and get him a prize. Not only that, but if Entei uses Heat Tackle, his HP goes up essentially to 160, 130, but then he's got 30 damage reduced the next turn, which means that even if Chris gets a Muscle Banded Assault Laser, that will only do 140, which reduces down to 110 because of Heat Tackle's effect, and doesn't get the KO. And there will be no... and there is, has he got the Muscle Band? This will be huge. If he's got the Muscle Band here, and he does. So, let me collect the thoughts nice and clearly. He gets the KO on Zubat. He reduces any, and we see a Fiery Torch coming down there, discard a Fire Energy, draw 2 cards, which is the same thing that Stadium Scorched Earth does, and we get a manual attachment as well. So, here he uses Flame Screen, he does 50 damage, he gets the KO, he reduces damage done by 30, and that's huge. There's no Zubats on the field, so there will be no Golbat damage, which means the absolute maximum amount of damage that... we see a Lysander on the Camerupt here. The absolute maximum amount of damage Chris could do was 140, reduced to 110, which is not enough to KO the Entei. Now, if Matt here has got a way to get the Camerupt out the active, a switch or something like that, and a DCE Muscle Band, it is game right here. Right away. Now, what we saw there was an overrun, which does 20 to the active, 20 to 1 off the bench. So if we see some kind of switch or escape rope or AZ play here, plus a Muscle Band and a DCE, we will see a turn 2 win from Matt. He will be able to do 170 damage. We've got a ruling question here. Because Flame Screen reduces damage done to this Pokemon by attacks by 30 during your opponent's next turn. So should it be reduced? I believe so. The question essentially is, does it still count when they go? And essentially, the deal is that if it's, the defending Pokemon, blah, 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 he's no longer the defending Pokemon. But Entei's, the effect of Flame Screen doesn't seem reliant on him being the defending Pokemon. It just says, during your opponent's next turn, any damage done to this Pokemon by attacks is reduced by 30. So I think that should block it. While we do these videos, I'm gonna have a quick check, ladies and gentlemen. I think that damage may well not have been done, but we shall double check as we go. As always, if you want to yell at me and call me an idiot in the comments, feel free. Oh, and we actually see an explosion jet. We just saw a whole bunch of energy going down nice and quickly. And we saw Explosion Jet for the KO from the Camerupt, getting the KO on the Manectric. So a very, very quick win there. So we're 1 game all, and we're going into game 3, and it's anybody's game. We saw in game 1 that when Chris gets set up and he gets all of the bats, then he really can do a lot of damage. But we saw there in game 2, Matt took 3 prizes in 2 turns, and that really is the power of this deck. Now, the Entei ruling is completely irrelevant, but I think it's nice to check. Alrighty then, so my apologies for that. I'm just sending a quick message to my judge friend. Hopefully they will get back to me before the conclusion of this game. If not, I'll pop a little appendix at the end, like I did on round 1. And these rulings come up in tournaments, ladies and gentlemen, and it made no effect on the previous game. But I think it's worth taking a minute at this point to remind us we all make mistakes. Now, there's a game I'm going to be on later on where I remembered using a trainer's mail to get a trainer's mail, which of course you're not allowed to do. Now, I have actually gone back and checked the footage, and it turns out I didn't. But we all, that's not a good hand. We all make these silly mistakes. I judge pre-releases. It's about the only judging I tend to do because I like playing too much. But I am a fan of judging pre-releases, and the amount of mistakes we see. So let's have no accusations or anything like that. These rulings can get very complicated. It's weird because I tell I have friends that don't play Pokemon, and I tell them I judge Pokemon tournaments, and the response I always get is, "Well, do you need a judge? I mean, how complicated could it possibly get?" And the answer is really, really complicated. And we're not talking, slow playing here or drawing 8 cards off a Juniper. But, these things can get very complicated. So, what was interesting was that going second in that previous game actually really helped Matt out. He was able to get the KO straight away on the Gold Zubat and put a lot of pressure on Chris. Having said that, had Chris got a better setup and gotten multiple Zubats down on turn 1 like he did last game or game 1 and like he's doing now in game 3, he actually potentially would have had enough damage to KO the Entei on his second turn. So we see here straight away a double Zubat start plus a couple of level balls, and we've got 4 Zubats straight away. Now, he needs to make sure he doesn't fill up his bench too quickly. There's the megaphone I mentioned. What he's going to want here, he's going to want at least a Shaman and a Manectric, but he really wants to be building up multiple Manectrics, because remember, the attack that Manectric really wants, that Assault Laser attack, takes 2 energy attachments. So if you've only got bench space for 1 Manectric at a time, then you do run into a situation where you actually don't have a Manectric ready to go, and your opponent can go about getting ahead. So we see a Sycamore straight away. He did lose a couple of energy there, which is slightly upsetting, but clearly he wants to get a Manectric this turn, and he wants to get an energy on the Manectric. And we've seen that he plays Super Rod. So, and There we go, worked out. And we've seen that he plays Super Rod, so he can get free basic energy back using Super Rod and shuffle them back into his deck for late game. So it's not the end of the world. Now, what we're going to want to see, what Matt's going to want to do this game straight away, he's going to want to do what he did in Game 2. He's going to want a turn 2 flame screen for 50 to get the KO on the Zubat. Here's the problem. Now we got 3 Zubats on the bench. So now, if Manectric comes up and does, he's only doing 110 damage, well, now we can just drop 1 Golbat, and now he's not doing 110 damage. He's doing 130 damage, and that's enough to get the KO. So we do see that Scorched Earth coming down, which allows him to discard a Fire Energy and draw 2 cards. Which, of course, is useful because A, it allows him to draw cards, and B, it allows him to get Fire Energy in the discard, which, of course, is something that he absolutely wants to do. Now, we see an Assault Vest coming down. I'm hoping he learned his lesson Game 1. That sounds so patronizing, doesn't it? Sorry if you're watching this, Matt. That sounded way too patronizing. But there is no special energy here. An Assault Vest, if your opponent doesn't have any special energy, this Assault Vest essentially has 2 negative effects. Number 1, it takes up one of those 2 slots for for tools on the Entei. And number 2, it puts a tool on Entei so that Manectric's second attack actually does more damage. So, not ideal. So, after all of that, we see a Sycamore. And the thing about Sycamore in this deck is, and we see a second Assault Vest, if this was against something like Night March that relied on double colorless, he'd be taking 80 less damage. But it's not. So we do see the Sycamore coming down. If that Entei can survive a turn, that 130 does still get the KO on a Crobat, but it won't get the KO on the Manectric at this stage. So, I'm not entirely. I mean, he's not going to get an attack off this turn. Like I've said, both the Pokemon here, they need at least 2 energy, one of which is a fire. So there is no double colorless. He could have got an attack with Seismitoad, but it's irrelevant now. And we see here, if he's got a Golbat, he's actually got the KO regardless. There was no Flame Screen to block damage, so that Manectric is currently doing 140 damage. And that will get the KO on the Entei. So he needs a Golbat here. And, okay. It didn't look like he was going to get it then, but then he gets the Ultra Ball at the last moment. So he can dump a couple of cards here. There's a Manectric and a Crobat. He can use this to search out the Golbat, put 20 damage on one of those Seismitoads. Okay, then. If I were him, I'd have just gone for the Manectric attack. Manectric's attack does 120 if your opponent's got a tool attached. And you can go ahead and just, you can go ahead and do 140 because of the muscle band, and that gets the KO on Entei. Assault Vest only reduces damage done by Pokemon with a special energy attached. So, yeah. It's, okay, so we do see the Golbat there. I am surprised he put it on... Oh, it's now on the active. I am surprised he put the Golbat down on the bench first of all, because he needs to get the active out. I'd assume that was a quick little... I think brain fart would be an appropriate word. I don't think that's rude. We keep this channel clean, but I think brain fart's all right. And that, unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately. Fortunately, he's got the level ball. He's got the Golbat anyway. So it looks like Chris is in a good position here. We saw in Game 2, Matt did what Matt needed to do. again, I would not have put the Golbat damage onto the Entei because with that muscle band, he's doing 140 anyway. That Manectric, like I say, the second attack does 120 as long as your opponent has got a tool attached. So you add a muscle band onto that and then it becomes 140 and you get the KO. So I think that Golbat damage there was wasted by Chris. I think he could have made better use of it. He could have 20 damage on each of the Seismitoads. Yeah, I'm just double checking. Assault Laser at 60 damage, plus 60 if your opponent's Pokemon's got a tool attached, plus 20 because you've got a muscle band. That's 140, and Entei's got 130 HP. So it was a slightly wasted Golbat drop. It doesn't look like it's the end of the world, but, you know, I like to point out good plays that could be made. I do hope people aren't sitting here thinking I'm mean. And Chris, if you're watching this, I think you're a very fine player. Technically, the only other Cornwall cities this year, you beat me in top 4. Now, admittedly, I didn't play the top 4 because I had to go to a Christmas party, but I'll let you in on a secret. I was playing Yveltal and Chris was playing Seismitoad Bats. I did not like my chances in top 4. I thought there was a fairly high chance I was going to lose in top 4 to Chris anyway. So please don't think I'm being mean. It's a very minor play. But I like to think these videos can help people to improve their play style and, you know, essentially to just play a little bit better. And that's why we need to point these things out. So, now, this is the turn. Although it looks like we saw a blacksmith and an energy attachment. I looked away for just a second. Oh, he's going to get a head ringer on it. Oh, that was... I mean, if he could have got... Because let me explain my thought process here. If Matt had been able to get 4 energy on a Camerupt... but he would have needed a muscle band and 4 fire energy, so it couldn't actually be done. Because even if he'd got a DCE and a blacksmith, he'd only have 2 fire energy, so he'd be capped at 100, because it's 50 damage for each one discarded. Okay, let me put this a different way. This is going back to what I said at the beginning of the game. Chris has filled up his bench too much. And it's going to take a fair bit. But if... Oh, and is that a head ringer? Is it a head ringer? Chris is trying to decide. And the question is here, does he put it on the active total? Does he put it on and that is the correct decision. Now, all that's... yeah, and that's actually huge because now he needs to discard 4 energy to get the KO. Whereas before, he could have put a muscle band on and discarded 3 energy to get the KO, which is now unfortunately not the case. So, the only way... Because if that Camerupt has one more energy... Okay, right. It would take a blacksmith to get that Camerupt going. Because now it takes 5 energy to do Explosive Jet, but you've got to discard 4 fire energy because there's no muscle band, so you can't have 3 fire energy DCE... because then you can't discard 4 to get the KO. So Matt's going to need 5 fire energy on the Camerupt to get a KO. Now, if he gets a KO, and it's going to take a lot, he's got to get the Seismitoad out the active, and he's got to get a blacksmith onto the Camerupt. But if he does that, he is going to be able to get the KO on the Manectric, and there is no other Manectric coming up. There will be no 2-energy Manectric next turn, unless Chris plays an AZ or a Super Scoop Up. And I think he's realised here. He needs to get a Manectric and an energy down this turn. Because if Matt uses that Camerupt to KO the Manectric next turn, then on Chris's next turn, all he's going to have to attack with is Manectric. And that means that he's not going to be able to get a KO. Now, okay, and what Chris is doing here very sensibly is he's essentially saying, look, I'm not in a hurry here. I don't need to do 140 damage and try and KO your Seismitoad. What I really want to do is pick away at your Pokemon. And there we do see Fighting Fury Bout. We've seen a BREAKPoint card in this video, ladies and gentlemen. We've seen a BREAKPoint card. And if he can spread enough energy around, then all of a sudden, if he's trapped in a situation where he's got to attack with the bats, he will be able to get KOs. Whereas if he KOs a Seismitoad too quickly, the Camerupt comes up into the active, the Camerupt KOs the Manectric, and then Chris doesn't have a backup plan. So it's in Chris's best interest to actually spread damage here rather than take quick KOs. The ideal situation for Chris is that as Seismitoad stays in the active for a while, he gets to spread a whole bunch of damage around using Manectric's overrun attack and using both Crobat and Golbat's attack abilities to spread damage around, bring everything into easy KO range, so if he is, as he currently is, trapped in a situation where he has no backup Manectric, he can take prizes without having a backup Manectric. So, here, Chris is doing his thing. We've seen a couple of overruns, and now we see the Crobat come down. And the Crobat does 30 on the Entei, and the Golbat does 20 on the Entei. Now that Fighting Fury belt means that Entei's attacks do 10 more damage, and he gets 40 more HP. So that Entei's now got 170 HP, and that's not an easy number to hit. But now that the Entei's got 6 damage, he's got 110 HP, which means a 2-energy Manectric without a Muscle Band will be able to go ahead and get the KO. And that's going to be incredibly useful. So we see a VS Seeker coming down here for a Blacksmith. Is this too little too late? Now, he's got the KO. Yeah, there we go. And that head ringer is huge. That head ringer is absolutely huge. Because it would be that Matt would only need to... Oh, that Fighting Fury bout on the Camerupt would be fun. 220 HP Camerupt, although it wouldn't allow him to hit that 170 number. But because of the we see a Lysander here bringing up the Seismitoad. Yeah. And then I'm to keep going back to that head ringer. The problem is, he could have discarded 3 energy on that Camerupt and kept 2, rather than discarding 4 and keeping 1. And that's a huge difference. That's a massive difference. Now, I've had confirmation from my friend. The 20 damage should have been done to the Entei. And the rule is, and I was forgetting this, and it's very silly of me, ladies and gentlemen. It's a nice, simple rule. Putting a Pokemon from the active to the bench ends the effect. So you need to look at who the effect is on. So when Entei uses Flame Screen, the effect of reducing damage the following turn by 30, the effect is on Entei. When Entei then goes back to the bench, it removes the effect. It ends the effect. Essentially, the effect is on Entei when he's the active Pokemon. So it is confusing, because just looking at the wording of Entei, it looks like it would block the bench damage the next turn when he's no longer in the active. But that's not the rule. The rule we go by with Entei, and I've checked with an incredibly good judge friend of mine, both an incredibly good friend and an incredibly good judge. So incredibly good judge friend, totally the appropriate phrasing to use. In that situation, the ruling, it's not about what's exactly written on the card, because it needs to interact with a general rule that benching a Pokemon will end the effect that it had when it was in the active. Entei goes to the bench, the effect the Flame Screen gave it goes away, so the 20 damage done by Overrun, when he's then on the bench, does still go through and hit Entei. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a second, Ross, that's a minor ruling that made no difference in Game 2, had no effect on the game, and it's a very minor ruling. And you know what? You're right. But I pride myself on being a pedant, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm good with this. I'm proud of myself. I really am. I like to think the pedantry is what sets PTCGRadio apart. That and, the voice. I might never say that again because it sounded horrific when I said it out loud. So we have a Seismitoad active with that Fighting Fury belt, and this is a really big new card from BREAKPoint. I've yet to do my top 10 cards from BREAKPoint. It's a video, to be honest, I've got about 10 videos lined up in the next week or two. But when I do my top 10 cards from BREAKPoint, I can't guarantee, I haven't sat and done my list yet, but I am 99% sure Fighting Fury belt is going to be there. Because, you've now got a 220 HP Seismitoad. That's massive. Taking away, now it doesn't do quite as much damage as the Muscle Band, so it only adds 10 rather than 20. But 40 more HP? Do you really want to be trying to take down a 220 HP Seismitoad? Quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, I don't. It's awkward. It's unpleasant, etc. So, Chris here, he spent this whole game pretty casually. You saw in Game 1, he pretty much won it by using Assault Laser to smash stuff in the face. In this game, Chris is, and I like this, and this really demonstrates that Chris is a very high quality, a high level player. And the reason is that he's playing Game 3 differently to how he played Game 1. And might I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, Chris won Game 1. And he only really, you could argue that he lost Game 2 because he had a slow start, or you could argue he lost Game 2 because Matt had a really good start, or you could argue that he lost Game 2 because Matt's got a very good deck. Either way, Chris clearly... he could have done what he did in Game 1. But he's sitting there and he's thinking, well, I've got Overrun and I've got all of my bats. And, he's now using the Crobat to skill dive and do 30 damage to the bench Pokemon. And essentially what he's going for here is, you know what? I can just spread damage around. I can put everything in KO range. And he hasn't, and now he has got a bench space, and he hasn't benched another Manectric. Now, whether it's prized, or he hasn't drawn into it, or he just hasn't bothered to try getting it out, I don't know. But I believe he's down to one prize now. I think he's KO'd a Camerupt and a Seismitoad. I could be wrong. But the prizes are unfortunately off the screen at the moment. But he's in a very good position, and we've only seen 2 prizes taken from Matt. And here again, this is going to really hurt because now okay, so he retreats the Entei there so that he can blacksmith the Camerupt, and he attaches for turn, but he's not going to be able to do I don't know if he should have been able to do that attack, ladies and gentlemen, because Camerupt's attack costs 4, and there's a head ringer on it, so the attack should have cost 5. Let me double check the wording on Camerupt there. Explosive Jet, fire, fire, colorless, colorless. Discard as many fire energy attached to your Pokemon as you like. This attack does 50 damage times the number of energy cards you discarded. Now, what that means is that once you've got 4 energy on, or 5 energy with the Muscle Band, it doesn't make a huge difference. But he shouldn't have been able to do Explosive Jet with 4 energy on the Camerupt, because he he had a headringer attached, which means Explosive Jet's attack cost is now fire, fire, colourless, colourless, colourless. So he should have needed 5 energy on. Now, it's sometimes easy to mistake, because like with Mewtwo's X-Ball, once you've got 3 energy on there, Headringer doesn't make it do any less. You still get the effect of all 3 energy. You just need 3 rather than 2 to use it. Same thing with Camerupt. You can still discard as many as you like to do 50. The damage done is not lowered, but you still need 5 energy on there once you've got a Headringer. So we are going to have an appendix at the end of this game after all, once I've gone back and checked. Hey-ho. So Chris here is doing his thing, and he's only able to do 50 this turn. But now, if Entei tries using his second attack and flips Tails, then he's going to be in a situation where he's actually KO'd. Remember, Entei's second attack, flip a coin. If Tails, you do 30 to yourself. So if he does, now if he flips Tails here, that Entei is KO'd. Oh, and he does hit Tails. And it's up to 130. He's KO'd here. Oh, sorry. I forgot about the Fighting Fury belt. Oh, is anyone paying attention in this game? And that is one of the downsides of Fighting Fury belt, ladies and gentlemen. So we did get to see those new cards in action. We got to see that Fighting Fury belt in action. Now, here's the thing about that Fighting Fury belt. It only adds 40 to HP while it's attached. So you saw there, when I said it got KO'd, what I meant was it puts Entei up to 130, which is his base HP. Then you get a situation where Chris brings down the Startling Megaphone, as we knew he played, and actually, at that stage, Entei then loses the Fighting Fury belt, and then he goes down to 130 HP, and he's got 130 damage, so he gets KO'd in the middle of the turn, and Chris takes his final prize for the win. So a good game there, a very interesting Entei Camerupt deck from Matt, and a very, very well-played game from Chris there. Thoroughly deserved victory. Thank you to both those chaps for agreeing to be on stream. I very much appreciate it, and thank you to Vinny Gardner and all at Mad for Miniatures. I'm going to be back with more games from this tournament, pretty much daily at this stage, and I know we haven't seen many Breakpoint cards yet, but next round we've got a Sizor deck coming up, the round after that we've got a Garchomp deck coming up, and we've got a Trevenant Break deck coming up. So I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, the Breakpoint train has left the station, and it is barreling down on you lovely people. As always, make sure you like the video. It will take a second. Go on. You could have done it by now. You done it? Good. Make sure you comment about the ruling with Entei, or whether the Camerupt had enough energy on, or the Camerupt deck, and etc, etc. Just take your comments down below. Even if I don't respond to them all, I very much enjoy reading them. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. If you have subscribed, find someone else to subscribe. I'll be back with more lovely games very soon indeed. Thank you very much for watching. Look after yourselves till next time. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just a little appendix on the end of that video. There was, unfortunately, a problem with Camerupt's attack. There were 2 instances in the game. There was near the end of Game 3, where I was mentioning it and discussing whether it did happen. It also happened at the end of Game 2. And essentially, in both situations, Camerupt had 4 fire energy attached and a Headringer, and used Explosive Jet. The problem is, of course, that Camerupt's attack cost for Explosive Jet is fire, fire, colourless, colourless. Now, if you put 5 energy on Camerupt, you can discard all 5 and do 250. The Headringer does not affect your ability to discard energy to do more damage, because it does 50 times the amount of fire energy you discard. However, because the Headringer is on Camerupt, then the attack cost of Explosive Jet becomes fire, fire, colourless, colourless, colourless. So in both of those situations, Camerupt should not have been able to use Explosive Jet. Now, it didn't really make a difference in Game 3, but in Game 2 it made a big difference. Because, of course, Matt got the win by KOing Chris's last Pokemon with Explosive Jet. Now, it might actually have worked out quite nicely, because Game 3 would have pretty much gone to time. So had Game 2 gone on longer, then Matt probably still would have won Game 2. he was in a very good position, he'd had a very good start, but Chris would not probably have had time to win game 3, so game 2 would not have counted and it would have been a draw. So we end up in a weird situation where even though Matt got a KO he shouldn't have got to win a game much earlier than he should have done, it actually probably worked out very well for Chris, because I think Matt was in a very good position in Game 2, and had Matt won Game 2 in another 5 or 10 minutes, then the overall game, probably the match, would have ended up in a draw overall. So although the Entei thing was done correctly and we're all good, bit of a brain fart on my situation, but other than that we're good, the Camerupt unfortunately did attack in 2 instances when it shouldn't have been allowed. Now I could have just ignored that, I could have chosen not to upload this video. Here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen, we all make mistakes in tournaments. I think it's an entertaining game, I think it's an entertaining video, so it's up here for you to watch. Yeah, there was a slight problem a couple times, but you know what, these things happen in real tournaments, and if you want to see real games from real tournaments represented properly, then we're going to include them warts and all. Sometimes people make mistakes, so the best thing we can do is bring attention to them so that they don't happen again in the future, not shy away from it. So look out for my other videos, ladies and gentlemen. Look after yourselves till next time, and as always, thank you very much for watching.